The man wiping down the speed bag had fought professionally for 12 years. 6'1", 235 pounds, even after retirement, with hands that still looked like they could break concrete. His name was Tommy Iron Fist Malone, and the gym on Sunset Boulevard bore his name in faded letters above the door. For 20 years, he'd trained fighters. Some went pro, some stayed amateur, but all learned the same lesson. Real fighting happened in the ring, with gloves, following the sweet science of boxing. Los Angeles, California. Malone's Boxing Gym, Sunset Boulevard, November 3, 1971. Thursday evening, 6:45 p.m. The gym occupied the second floor of an old brick building that had seen better days. Wooden stairs creaked under the weight of fighters coming and going. Inside, the space smelled like leather, sweat, and liniment, the perfume of serious training. 2 rings dominated the floor. Heavy bags hung from ceiling chains, a speed bag platform in the corner. Walls covered with fight posters from the 1950s and 60s, some featuring Tommy himself, younger, harder, meaner. 23 fighters trained this evening, some working bags, others sparring in the rings. The sound of leather hitting leather, the rhythmic bounce of jump ropes, the occasional grunt of exertion. This was a working gym. No fancy equipment, no air conditioning, just the fundamentals of boxing, taught by men who'd actually fought. Tommy stood near the main ring, watching 2 of his middleweights spar. At 54, he still moved like a fighter, weight on the balls of his feet, hands naturally up, always in a position to react. His nose had been broken 3 times. His ears showed the cauliflower damage of too many headshots. His knuckles were twisted from decades of impact. But his mind was sharp. He could read a fight better than most active trainers, could see openings before they appeared, could predict combinations before they were thrown. That's what made him valuable, not his aging body, but his accumulated knowledge of combat. His assistant trainer, a former lightweight named Joey Ramos, approached. "Boss, we got a situation." Tommy didn't look away from the sparring. "What kind?" "Guy downstairs says he wants to train here, but he's not a boxer." "So? We get beginners all the time." "He's not a beginner. He's a karate guy. Says he's a champion, wants to work on his hands with real boxers." Tommy's expression soured. "Karate." "Yeah. Tell him we don't do karate. This is a boxing gym. He wants to learn kicks and kata. There's plenty of dojos around." "I told him that. He says he's not here to teach karate, just wants to train, improve his hand speed, his footwork. Says he respects boxing and wants to learn from it." Tommy finally looked at Joey. "He's serious?" "Seems like it. Polite, respectful, not trying to prove anything, just wants to train." Tommy thought about it. The gym struggled financially, had for years. Boxing wasn't as popular as it used to be. Karate and kung fu movies were drawing young people away from the sweet science. It irritated him, people thinking choreographed movie fighting was real combat. "How much is he offering?" "Didn't discuss money. I figured you'd want to meet him first." "All right, send him up. Let's see what we're dealing with." What Tommy Malone didn't know was that the karate guy waiting downstairs had been middleweight karate champion of the world for 4 consecutive years and was about to challenge everything Tommy believed about fighting. 5 minutes later, a man in his early 30s climbed the stairs. Average height, lean build, carrying a gym bag. He wore simple training clothes, shorts, t-shirt, athletic shoes, nothing flashy. He looked around the gym with genuine interest, not judgment. Tommy approached him. "You the karate guy?" "I practice martial arts, yes. Chuck Norris." Tommy didn't recognize the name, didn't follow karate tournaments. "Tommy Malone, this is my gym. Joey says you want to train here?" "If you'll have me. I'm working on my hand techniques. I've studied some boxing, but I'd like to learn from people who really understand it." "Why? Karate's got punches." "It does, but boxing's refined handwork for over a century. The footwork, the angles, the defensive techniques, that's specialized knowledge I don't have. Tommy absorbed this. Most martial artists he'd encountered were arrogant, claimed their style was superior. This guy seemed genuinely humble, willing to learn. You compete? In karate tournaments, full contact when possible. I've won some championships. Against other karate guys? Yes. Ever fought a boxer? Not in a ring. I've sparred with some, trained with a few, but never officially. Tommy smiled, not friendly, testing. So you don't really know if your karate works against boxing? Chuck met his eyes. I know my techniques work, but could I learn from boxing? Absolutely. That's why I'm here. What if I told you karate doesn't work, that it's performance art for movies, that a decent boxer would take apart any martial artist? I'd say you're entitled to your opinion, and I'd still like to train here if you're willing to teach me. Tommy studied him. No defensiveness, no ego, just calm acceptance. This wasn't what he expected. All right, here's the deal. You want to train in my gym? You train by my rules. Boxing fundamentals. Proper stance, proper punches. No kicks, no exotic techniques, just the sweet science. You good with that? I'm good with that. And if I think you're wasting my time or my fighter's time, you're out. No refund, no argument. Understood. Gym fee is $30 a month, cash. Chuck pulled out his wallet, counted out $30. Tommy pocketed it. You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. Wear boxing shoes if you got 'em. If not, get some, and be ready to work. We don't do light training here. I'll be here. Chuck left. Tommy watched him go. Joey came over. You really gonna train him? Why not? His money's good, and I'm curious. Want to see if this karate stuff holds up against real boxing. You planning to test him? Tommy smiled. Eventually. Let's see what he's got first. Over the next 2 weeks, Tommy Malone watched Chuck Norris train, and what he saw challenged his assumptions about martial artists. Chuck showed up every morning at 6, sometimes earlier. He worked the bags with focus and intensity. His punches weren't boxer punches, too straight, too stiff in some ways, but they were fast, very fast, and he had endurance. Could go 3-minute rounds on the heavy bag for an hour without slowing down. Tommy noticed other things too. Chuck's footwork was different from boxing, but not wrong. He moved on the balls of his feet, weight centered, able to change direction instantly. Boxers moved forward and back, side to side. Chuck moved in angles, 45 degrees, cutting off space in ways Tommy had never seen. The other fighters noticed too, started watching when Chuck worked out. He was polite, respectful, never interrupted their training, but his presence was different. He brought an intensity that was quiet but undeniable. One morning, Tommy's best middleweight, a kid named Rodriguez, who was 12-2 as a pro, asked to work with Chuck on the mitts. You sure? Tommy asked. Yeah, I want to see what he's got. His hand speed's crazy. Want to see if it holds up against movement. Tommy called Chuck over. Rodriguez wants to work mitts with you. You up for it? Sure. They set up. Rodriguez held the pads. Chuck threw combinations. Jab cross, jab cross, hook cross hook. Standard boxing combinations, but thrown with speed that surprised Rodriguez. Damn, Rodriguez muttered. You're fast. You're telegraphing the pad positions, showing me where you want me to hit before I throw. Makes it easier. Oh yeah? Rodriguez grinned. Try this. He started moving the pads unpredictably, changing angles, making Chuck adjust mid-combination. Most beginners would struggle. Chuck adapted instantly. His punches found the pads regardless of where Rodriguez moved them. After 10 minutes, Rodriguez was breathing hard. Okay, you got skills, no doubt. Tommy had been watching. Chuck, come here. Chuck approached, toweling off sweat. Where'd you really learn to hit like that? Years of training. Makiwara board work for conditioning, speed bag for rhythm, heavy bag for power, and competing against people who hit back. Makiwara? Striking post, traditional Okinawan training tool. You hit it thousands of times, builds hand strength and technique. Tommy nodded. Your hands, they're conditioned. I can see the calluses. You've been hitting hard surfaces. Since I was 18, 14 years now. And the speed? Muscle memory, repetition. When you've thrown a punch 10,000 times, your body knows how to do it efficiently. Tommy looked at Rodriguez. What do you think? I think he's legit, boss. Fast hands, good timing. He's not a boxer, but he can fight. Tommy made a decision. All right, Chuck, you want to spar? Chuck looked at him calmly. With who? With me. The gym went quiet. Several fighters stopped what they were doing to listen. Joey stepped forward. Boss, you haven't sparred in 5 years. I haven't fought in 5 years, but I can still move, and I want to see something. Chuck, light sparring, just testing. I want to see if your karate works against someone with real boxing experience. You willing? If that's what you want, it is.
What happened in the next 8 minutes would become the most discussed sparring session in the gym's 30-year history. They set up in the main ring, both wore headgear, 16-ounce gloves, standard sparring equipment. Tommy's fighters gathered around to watch. This wasn't unusual. Tommy occasionally sparred with his pros to demonstrate technique. But this was different. Tommy was testing something, proving a point. Tommy moved well for 54. Years of training had ingrained proper technique. His hands stayed up. His footwork was economical. He'd lost speed but gained cunning, knew how to set traps, bait mistakes, counterpunch. Chuck stood in a more square stance, less traditional boxing, more karate. His hands were up, but positioned slightly different. His weight centered rather than on his front foot. They touched gloves, began. Tommy moved forward immediately, establishing pressure. He threw a jab, testing range, testing Chuck's reaction. Chuck's head moved slightly. The jab missed by inches. Tommy threw another jab, then a cross. Both missed. Chuck's movement was minimal, but perfectly timed. Tommy's punches were finding air where Chuck had been, but no longer was. Tommy pressed harder. He'd fought 47 professional fights. He understood timing, distance, rhythm. He threw combinations, jab, jab, hook, cross, cross. Textbook boxing, 20 years of muscle memory behind each punch. Chuck defended without blocking. His head moved, his body shifted, his feet repositioned. Every punch traveled through empty space. Not wild misses. Tommy's technique was perfect, but Chuck was reading him, seeing the punches before they fully developed. The fighters watching began murmuring, "Is he not throwing back? He's just defending. What's he doing?" After 2 minutes of Tommy's offense finding nothing, Chuck started countering. Not with boxing combinations, with single, precise strikes. Tommy threw a jab, Chuck slipped it, and his rear hand shot forward, straight, fast, stopping an inch from Tommy's headgear. A point made without contact. I could have landed that. Tommy reset, tried a different approach. He feinted low, threw high, drew Chuck's attention one direction, attacked another. Fighter IQ accumulated over decades. These were tricks that had worked against skilled opponents. Chuck responded to the feints but didn't commit. His reactions were measured. When Tommy's actual punch came, Chuck was already moving. His counter, another straight punch, this time to Tommy's body, stopped just short of impact. Tommy stepped back, breathing harder now. "You're not throwing for real." "I said light sparring." "Throw real. I can take it." Chuck's expression didn't change. "You sure?" "Yeah, I want to see what you actually got." They reset. This time, Chuck initiated. He closed distance with a speed that surprised Tommy. Not rushing, not wild, just suddenly there, inside Tommy's guard, where a boxer's long-range advantages didn't work. Chuck threw a combination, not boxing punches, karate strikes, straight, penetrating shots aimed at vulnerable targets, to the solar plexus, to the floating ribs, to the jaw, each punch thrown from close range with snapping power.
Tommy tried to tie Chuck up, clinch, use his weight, grind him down.
But Tommy Iron Fist Malone was not someone who accepted lessons easily, and what he did next would test both men in ways neither expected. Tommy pulled off his headgear. "Take yours off." "Tommy," Joey started. "Take it off," Tommy repeated, looking at Chuck. "We're not kids. We're both grown men who fought for real. Let's see what happens without the safety equipment." Chuck hesitated. "That's not necessary." "Maybe not, but I want to know, really know, can your karate work against someone who's fought professionally? Not light sparring, real testing." The fighters around the ring shifted uncomfortably. This had gone beyond professional demonstration. Chuck slowly removed his headgear. "What are the rules?" "No rules, just control. We're not trying to hurt each other, but we're not pulling punches either. I want to see what's real." They faced each other again. The atmosphere had shifted. This wasn't training anymore. This was about validation. Tommy needed to prove his worldview. Chuck needed to... what? Prove nothing. He'd already demonstrated his skills, but Tommy was pushing. Tommy came forward, not with boxing combinations this time, with raw aggression. Hooks, uppercuts, overhand rights, punches thrown with bad intentions. He'd shifted from technical boxer to street fighter, desperate to land something, anything. Chuck's defense became more economical, minimum movement. His hands parried, his body angled, his feet repositioned, and between Tommy's attacks, Chuck's counters came. Not to the head, that would cause damage, to the body. Sharp, penetrating strikes that Tommy felt through his ribs. One hit the solar plexus. Tommy's breath caught. He kept fighting, but he was hurt. His movements became more desperate, less technical. Chuck's next counter went to Tommy's lead bicep, a precise strike to the muscle. Tommy's left arm went momentarily numb. His jab disappeared. Tommy tried a wild right hook. Chuck stepped inside it, struck Tommy's chest, not hard, but placed perfectly. Tommy's diaphragm spasmed. He couldn't breathe. His hands dropped. He bent forward, gasping. Chuck didn't follow up, just stepped back, waiting. Tommy tried to draw air into his lungs. His body wasn't obeying. The panic of not being able to breathe, every fighter's nightmare. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, felt like forever. Then his breath returned, ragged, painful, but functional. He straightened slowly, looked at Chuck, at the calm, unbothered expression, at the man who had just systematically dismantled his offense without apparent effort. "How?" Tommy's voice was hoarse. "How did you do that?" "Different training, different targets, different approach to combat. I fought professionally for 12 years, sparred with champions, trained with the best coaches, and you made me look like an amateur." "You're not an amateur. You're a skilled boxer. But boxing has rules, weight classes, prohibited targets, refs who stop the fight when someone's hurt. I trained for situations without those limits." Tommy sat heavily on the ring canvas. His chest still ached.
But what Tommy Malone said next would surprise everyone in the gym, including himself. Tommy looked up at Chuck. "Teach me." "What?" "Teach me, whatever that was, those techniques, that approach. I want to learn it." Chuck extended his hand, helped Tommy to his feet. "You already know how to fight. You don't need—" "I know how to box. That's different. You just showed me there's a whole dimension of fighting I've never understood. Pressure points, joint manipulation, targeting vulnerabilities instead of just throwing power at resistant areas. That's a different level. It took me years to learn. Then I'll take years to learn it. I'm 54, got maybe 10 good years left in this body. I don't want to waste them being ignorant." Chuck looked at the surrounding fighters. "What about them? What about the gym's reputation? You're a boxing legend. If you start learning karate, if I start learning how to actually fight instead of just box, maybe my fighters will be better for it. Maybe we'll produce more complete fighters, guys who can handle themselves in any situation, not just inside a ring with rules." Joey spoke up. "Boss, the old-timers won't like this. They'll say you've gone soft, that you've betrayed boxing." The old-timers aren't here training every day. I am, and I just felt what real fighting looks like. It's not soft. It's more dangerous than anything I learned in boxing." Tommy looked at Chuck. "Will you teach us, me and whoever else wants to learn?" Chuck thought about it. This wasn't a typical request. Tommy was offering to completely change his gym's philosophy, to integrate Eastern martial arts into a traditional Western boxing environment. The resistance would be significant. "I'll teach, but I need commitment. This isn't a weekend seminar. It's fundamental. You'll have to unlearn some habits, question some assumptions, be willing to be a beginner again." I just got humbled by someone 70 pounds lighter than me. I'm already a beginner. Chuck extended his hand. Tommy took it. The handshake was firm, respectful. Rodriguez called out from ringside, "I'm in. Whatever you're teaching, I want to learn it." Other voices joined. "Me too. Yeah, I want to learn that sweep thing. Teach us that pressure point stuff." Within minutes, half the fighters in the gym had committed to learning. Over the next 6 months, Malone's boxing gym became something unprecedented, a hybrid fighting school that combined the best of both worlds. Chuck came to the gym 4 evenings a week. He taught after regular boxing training. Basics first, stance, balance, how to target vulnerable areas, then more advanced techniques, joint locks, pressure points, sweeps, and throws. Tommy was his most dedicated student. At 54, with a body worn down by decades of fighting, he couldn't do everything Chuck taught, but he absorbed the principles, learned to see fighting differently, started teaching his boxers to defend against kicks, to recognize grappling setups, to protect vulnerable targets that boxing rules didn't normally address. The gym's culture shifted. Young fighters who came in wanting to learn just boxing discovered a more complete system. Boxing's hand speed and footwork, karate's kicks and strikes, judo's throws and sweeps, wrestling's clinch control. Rodriguez became the test case. He had a fight scheduled 3 months after Chuck started teaching. His opponent was a traditional boxer, strong, aggressive, good record. Everyone expected a typical boxing match. Instead, Rodriguez used angles his opponent had never seen, defended with minimal movement, countered from ranges that confused his opponent, won by TKO in the 4th round when he landed a liver shot that his
2 years after that first sparring session, a sports magazine ran a feature about innovative training methods, and Tommy Malone's testimony became a catalyst for change across multiple gyms. The journalist visited Malone's boxing gym in late 1973. By then, the integration of martial arts and boxing was complete. Fighters trained both disciplines seamlessly. The gym's record spoke for itself. Fighters trained there were winning more, getting injured less, and showing versatility their opponents couldn't match. The article's centerpiece was Tommy's interview. 2 years ago, a karate champion asked to train here. I said yes, but I thought I was humoring him, thought I'd prove boxing was superior. Instead, he proved I'd been teaching an incomplete system. Chuck Norris didn't just beat me in sparring. He showed me dimensions of fighting I'd never considered. Pressure points, joint manipulation, using an opponent's force against them, targeting vulnerabilities instead of just hitting resistant areas with power. I'd spent 30 years in boxing, fought professionally, trained champions, and in 8 minutes, this guy showed me I'd missed half of what fighting actually was. The hardest part wasn't learning new techniques. It was admitting I'd been wrong, that my sport, my life's work, was limited, that there were other valid approaches, that a system I'd dismissed as movie fighting was actually more street effective than what I'd been teaching. But admitting that opened doors. We integrated karate, judo, wrestling into our boxing foundation. Our fighters became more complete, more adaptable, better able to handle unexpected situations. And it saved the gym. We were struggling before Chuck showed up. Traditional boxing was dying. Kids wanted Bruce Lee, not Muhammad Ali. By adapting, by incorporating what they wanted while maintaining our boxing foundation, we stayed relevant. More than that, we stayed honest. We admitted the truth.
No single system has all the answers. Real fighting requires synthesis, taking the best from multiple disciplines and creating something better than any of them alone. The article sparked conversations across the combat sports world. Other boxing gyms started incorporating martial arts. Karate schools started teaching boxing fundamentals. The rigid boundaries between disciplines began to blur. The final word came from Chuck Norris himself in a 1995 interview about cross-training in martial arts. The interviewer asked, "You're credited with helping pioneer mixed martial arts training. When did you first realize that combining systems was valuable?" Chuck smiled. 1971, a karate gym in Los Angeles. The owner, Tommy Malone, let me train there even though I wasn't a boxer. He wanted to test his assumption that boxing was superior to karate. So we sparred, and I showed him techniques he'd never seen: pressure points, joint locks, different targeting. He was a professional fighter, tough, skilled, experienced, but I had tools he didn't. Different tools, not better necessarily, but different. And to his credit, he didn't double down on his beliefs. He didn't make excuses or dismiss what happened. He asked me to teach him, asked me to teach his gym. That humility, that willingness to learn from someone in a different discipline, that's what real mastery looks like. What did you learn from boxing? Everything about hand techniques. My punches were fast but sloppy before Tommy's fighters refined them. I learned footwork that made me more evasive, defensive techniques that protected me better, head movement, shoulder rolls, parrying, all boxing fundamentals that made me a more complete fighter. Tommy gave me boxing, I gave him martial arts. Together, we created